Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigeland Network show. My name is Emma Vigeland, back at it with another week of sports discussion. March Madness, NFL free agency, Aaron Rodgers, some NBA and NHL playoff talk a little bit at the end. How are you doing, my co-host and producer Bradley Alsop?
Sorry, what about Aaron Rodgers?
Oh, God. Yeah, you really are kind of more intimately involved in some of our top stories today, given your Jets fandom and also college basketball fandom.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can't. I'm not sure which one was better. I'm not sure which one went better for me
Which,
in terms of my bracketology or.
Your bracket's certainly busted.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, for
gotta
sure.
be, right?
Yeah,
You had one.
Indiana was in my Final Four.
You were off to a hot start, though, with. Didn't you pick that upset?
I picked Furman over Virginia.
You did pick Furman over Virginia. Yeah, Virginia's very boom.
Also, I do have Florida Atlantic in my Sweet 16. I don't know why I decided to do that, but that
felt right.
That actually hit.
Yeah.
That's no. There's no wisdom there. It was just, I think I was like, oh, sure.
Gut feel.
A three-letter Florida Breves school.
Yeah.
Nice. Let's go.
Well, let's start there. I mean, pretty insane weekend for March Madness. The Purdue upset, lost to Fairleigh Dickinson. Northern New Jersey represent. I mean really, Fairleigh Dickinson. Wow, let's go. Speaking of the Jets, I think, isn't Fairleigh Dickinson in Florham Park?
It's in Teaneck.
Oh, I thought it was in Florham
Pretty
Park.
close by, though.
Yeah, because Florham Park's where the Jets
training facility,
practice facility is. Yeah.
Really wild game for that to happen because so Roger Sherman from The Ringer made this observation by height radius or whatever, this stat of like teams that are basically adjusted statistics for teams by height.
Mm-hmm.
Purdue was number 1 in the country.
Wow.
Because Zach Edey, their star center, is 7'3". And the statistic only adjusts for 363 teams. Who do you think was 363rd?
I mean, it was. Is it Fairleigh Dickinson? Because they had speed and offense on their side, is my understanding.
So that's what was crazy is that it was literally what Roger Sherman said is purely by virtue of size. By that metric, it was literally as David and Goliath as it could possibly be. The shortest team statistically versus the tallest team statistically.
But it was a bit of a matchup or mismatch, really, for Purdue in that way, right? I guess, they had bad luck, but they also were able to. Fairleigh Dickinson was able to score on them.
The reason I would diagnose that there are ways to look at every big upset from the tournament here so far, and I'm thinking of the Furman win over UVA, the Fairleigh Dickinson game against Purdue, and then the Princeton game against Arizona.
Yeah.
All of them were kind of teams where it was if they had and honestly even Arkansas winning their matchup to get into the Sweet 16. I'm just blanking on who they played, but the first three, they were very visible.
Kansas.
Oh, Kansas, right? They're taking down the number 1 seed and reigning champs.
Right.
The first 3 games, though, there were kind of clear strategic advantages that I think all of these teams, to their credit, in those one game, sample sizes, really took advantage of, and that's what you were saying in terms of Fairleigh Dickinson and Purdue is that. The knock on Zach Edey is he's really kind of he's 7'3". He has very soft touch, great footwork, but he is a kind of I would say almost sort of prototypical of a great big man, not for this era, because he can't shoot, nor does he really defend in space. He is completely a restricted area big man.
Right.
And so what Fairleigh Dickinson did along with their coach Tobin Anderson was they essentially blanketed and did their best to neutralize the guard play of Purdue so that Edey was basically the only one who had any sort of opportunity to score and make plays.
Yeah.
And the Purdue guards were just completely stifled by the defensive coverage and could not, Fletcher Lawyer, one of their more reliable scorers, just could not get anything going. So it kind of rendered Purdue's offense completely one-dimensional, and they couldn't get enough from their wing players and their guards to offset them, to offset the only production they were getting from Edey on basically both ends of the floor.
Gotcha.
And so that was super impressive to see from a 16 seed on a 1 seed, obviously. But then also Arizona and Princeton is an interesting story too, because on it, like Tommy Lloyd, the Arizona coach, he has basically had like one of the most winningest runs for the first 2 seasons of a coaching career. I don't know if it's in team history or in the NCAA, but he's been super successful in the regular season. But this team didn't specifically have a lot of, like, I would say, like, straight up, like, clear NBA talent like they did last year with Benedict Mathurin. And or like even like, you know, DeAndre Ayton before him. Actually, I think DeAndre Ayton was Arizona.
Yeah.
So I think they were a little bit rife for a potential upset, just because it seems like when they're 2 kind of star players, both with pretty interesting names. I can't remember, but I can't remember. They have one Finnish guy, I'm pretty sure, and a guy who's either East or West African. So they have 2 kind of like names like a lot of vowels and consonants.
You're not going to get that from me.
No,
Yeah. Although representing the Finns, always appreciated.
They once Princeton was sort of able to neutralize them, that kind of was the game, and Princeton was just hot from, like, they were just kind of making shots from all over and staying aggressive. And it's a great story because, you know, getting into the Sweet 16, Mitch Henderson, their coach, who was a Princeton alum himself, literally on the floor as the starting point guard in 1998 for the last game, when the last time the Princeton Tigers won an NCAA tournament game. So very full circle for him to be able to, like, coach this team to the Sweet 16.
Right.
After 25 years passed, and he was the guy on the court. And then the last one, Virginia is a great regular season team, but they can't. The way Tony
You
Bennett...
hit the nail on the head saying this to me before this started, about, like, before the upset even
Oh,
happened.
yeah, in the sense of...
Why you were able to predict it is just that Virginia does... It's like they're kind of like the New York Giants of March Madness. They're either...
Totally.
Except for the regular season part, but
it's such boomer bust
for them.
Right. It's like literally they lose to UMBC in the first 16-1 upset ever. Next year, win the title. Then the next 3 years lose in the first round.
Right.
So... The thing with the Tony Bennett team is, like, he is such a stylistic coach that it's easy to kind of get swept up in how UVA plays, which is that they are a suffocating defense. They are they play extremely slow. They grind possessions to a halt basically and kind of dare you to score on them. And if you can't, they kind of have proficient enough shooters and guys and big men to basically get to the point of, if we can score 35 to 40 points and hold you to 30, you're not going to score the extra 10 points to beat us.
Okay.
But the issue is Furman had 2 or 3 guys who had enough juice to consistently make threes and consistently bother a few of the guys that were usually, like, they basically just did not let UVA play the style that they wanted to play.
Right.
They kept the pace up the entire time and tried to get out in transition and not let them grind it out, not let them slow it down. And that's what did it. That's also another reason why I think for UVA is a susceptible upset, is that you can, in conference and in the regular season, kind of, you know, a 30-game season, styles can make fights and styles can win, especially if you're executing your style consistently at a high level. But then teams know what to plan for, especially in a 1-game sample.
And the urgency in a 1-game setting is going to cut against them because of course every team's going to play fast in that situation.
And if there's no way to diversify that, if there's no way to switch it up, it makes them vulnerable.
Right.
So credit to Furman and their gameplay there. But also, I mean, honestly, a few other fun things. Arkansas, again, you know, great run so far into the Sweet 16, beating Kansas. I think this goes to show you that a few of these number ones clearly were number ones, number twos were more vulnerable than their seeding kind of predicted. And I think it goes to show that there is some parity really kind of settling in.
Well, the transfer portal is really kind of making itself the fact that you don't have to wait a year after transferring. It's creating a fluidity amongst college basketball that's exciting.
Which I think is great, honestly.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's like I'd actually rather and prefer some of these less heralded schools that are obviously still in Power 5 conferences conferences like FAU, for example, Florida Atlantic,
Mm-hmm.
be able to make a deep run as a 9 seed into the tournament, into the Sweet 16. Like I think that's more fun than just basically, oh right, because like you said, for example, if the 9th man, 12th man on Kansas, Tennessee, whatever the case may be, is not getting any play because he's behind 5 future first round picks, they don't have to wait a year to plan another team where they could be the driving force for a
And
for
they
a
can
lesser
follow
team.
the NIL money too, which is
Absolutely.
what I want for
Absolutely.
these guys too. I
So
want them to make their money in this time
Totally.
period.
So I feel like that's also been great to see in terms of a few teams kind of breaking out of their seeding to actually, take down some more blue blood programs. So I think the field is already a great one for the Sweet 16. It's a lot of fun matchups and just a fun situation that it was either going to be Fairleigh Dickinson, the 16 seed, or FAU, the 9 seed, to get into the Sweet 16. So,
Yeah.
And Arkansas, they just have a great. They have a kind of attitude, especially under Eric Musselman, their coach, who is just like this real psycho. Like his
name's Musselman.
His name is literally Eric Musselman. And
Musselman.
And
spelled like Muscle Man.
Musselman.
Oh, okay. But still, either way.
And he's an absolute psycho. Like he's 58, 59 years old. He's extremely jacked. He likes to when they win, he celebrates harder than his players do.
Oh, he's the guy that took his shirt off.
Yes, he rips his shirt off when they win. And so he instills like a real like ferocity and tenacity in his players. And I think that's another thing where it's like
fun. That's why everyone's all on the Arkansas bandwagon, because they're fun.
They're fun. They're aggressive. They play fast. They're like it's just like a team where you're like, oh, like if you're not ready to match that intensity, like Kansas was not ready to match that intensity, you're gonna lose.
So what's your prediction? I mean, what are you thinking now that we're in like Sweet 16 in times?
It's interesting because I'm thinking all of my wisdom going in, which was not a lot, has kind of turned on its head with how things have panned out.
That's how it always happens.
It's just like I thought I didn't expect Miami to be so tenacious in beating Indiana handily and like substantively.
I'm sorry, Will.
Yeah, I don't know. It was a brutal game because like Indiana was close for a second going into the second half, but Miami. It just is so clear to see, and it's just a testament to Jim Larrañaga as a coach that like he's in his early 70s. He hasn't won a NCAA championship, I don't think, or if he has, it's been a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And he just year in and year out just coaches up a team that is just very fluid offensively and has a bunch of guys who can just create off the dribble and make shots. And it's elementary to say this, but especially at the college level and especially in a 1-game sudden death sample size, shot making, there is simply nothing more important, especially at this level, than having somebody who can make a 3-pointer reliably or having someone who can make like a contested mid-range reliably. It sounds elementary, obviously, but I'm saying like...
But that's the NBA game kind of trickling down, right?
Oh, certainly, because it's interesting because you see where these certain teams struggle, where they simply just don't have shooters. Like even if they have guys, even if they have a stifling defense, even if they have a great guy around the rim, even if they have great finishers around the rim, that's important. But you need to be able to make shots and draw contact. And when you draw contact, make it hurt by making free throws. Those are the two things that I think what I was seeing all over the map these past 4 days, where teams were just not able to execute in those areas, and that's what kind of was their downfall. Whereas these other teams like Arkansas, like Gonzaga, who just beat TCU, like even FAU, they're one of their their great players yesterday. John L. Davis, I think is John L. something. I think that's his name.
You're not gonna I don't know.
He was padding the stat sheet. I mean, he had like 25 points, 11 rebounds, 5 steals, 5 assists. It's not really enough to just like have. He had a great stat line, but I think it's because he was able to score at will while also affecting other plays on the defensive end. That wasn't just like, oh, I'm backing somebody up in the post, or
right.
I'm just making threes. Like offensive, like it is, like you said in the NBA. Offensive versatility is, I think, the name of the game, and I think teams are really, really ready to exploit it when they know it's not there.
Yeah. Well, okay. So predictions, though. What are you thinking now? Who do you feel best about to win the actual title?
Honestly, after
Final four, like.
yeah, honestly, after get with all that in mind, with in terms of like my mindset after kind of seeing the first two rounds, I'm much more bullish on Arkansas than I was before.
Right.
I thought there was a potential that just like the Kansas there is something there, there's something to be said. I don't even know how much you can potentially factor this in, but Bill Self, I think due to a health matter, wasn't coaching in the round of 32. So I mean, one of his assistant coaches took over as in that capacity, and I think they really did have some talented players. But Arkansas, I just think if they can stick it to Kansas like that, I think like they're a tough out. Like
Yeah.
they really are. This is not an easy team to beat or an easy team.
But you
to
like
exploit
Miami
weaknesses.
too. I mean, Miami going up against Houston, that might be a buzzsaw.
I still think I thought I was very impressed by how Miami played against Indiana, but Houston's just a different story because they were kind of the odds-on favorite coming in,
Right.
absent UCLA or Alabama, but Houston's I still think is Houston hasn't really looked particularly, even against Auburn. The game was a little bit closer, but I think they still even ended up winning by around 8 points anyway, so it wasn't even that close.
81-64.
Oh, it was even yeah. So
Yeah,
it was I think close for a bit, and they pulled away again. So Houston hasn't looked that bothered by teams yet, so I'm not too concerned about them. And if they beat Miami handily, I kind of think they're a shoo-in for Final Four.
Okay.
My thinking though is Houston. I would keep my eye out still for Houston, Alabama, the two front runners who have really not been bothered whatsoever getting into the Sweet 16, and then Gonzaga looking really, really convincing against a very good TCU team, and Arkansas.
So you're picking them over UCLA.
I think UCLA is fantastic. I think they are a little bit less healthy, and Gonzaga it's hard to pick them because they routinely get this. I mean, I think Mark Few has won his last 7 straight round of 32 appearances, which is a testament to his consistency, but they always fall a step short.
Yes.
It's hard to bank on them, but they really did look really good against TCU yesterday.
Okay.
So the 4 teams I'm still looking out for: Houston, Alabama, Arkansas, and Gonzaga.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's helpful, guys. So if you're doing like a retroactive bracket situation, look, Bradley knows his stuff on this front. And I'm sorry, Will from Indiana, about
I know,
about
brutal
Indiana.
for the Hoosiers.
I apologize, dude. I'm sorry you had to see that. All right, well, let's thank you for your college basketball expertise.
Oh, my pleasure.
We now turn to some NFL stuff. Still nothing official on the Aaron Rodgers front,
No.
but he did say, and we have clips from this interview, Aaron Rodgers has officially announced on his favorite and seemingly only media medium that he trusts, because they don't really challenge him whatsoever, the Pat McAfee show. And look, Pat McAfee's a fun personality. I totally understand it. But Rodgers' bizarre hatred of the media, I don't know. You can psychoanalyze it, especially when it really seems to all stem from the fact that he was called out for lying about being, quote, immunized for COVID. So a little bit self-inflicted. But this is Rodgers announcing on the Pat McAfee show that his intention, as he puts it, is to play for the New York Jets. Thank God he cut his hair, by the way. He was doing that like, I don't know, it was a rat tail, something close to it. He's looking like a little bit more like the Rodgers of old, except he's just descended even further into being more of an asshole, even though he looks like his pre-immunized self. Enlightened self, right?
At this point, as I sit here, I think since Friday, I made it clear that my intention was to play, and my intention was to play for the New York Jets.
Okay.
And I haven't been holding anything up at this point. It's been compensation that the Packers are trying to get for me and kind of digging their heels in. So I would just, I think it is interesting at this point to step back and look at the whole picture. My side, love and appreciation, gratitude for everything that Green Bay has done for me. So much love and gratitude, and just heart open for the Packer fans.
Hell yeah.
And what it's meant to be their quarterback.
Yeah. look, his intention is to play for the New York Jets. I mean, it had seemed clear. That language would scare me a little bit as a Jets fan because it's like, my intention is to not trade X player. It's like GM speak for eventually you can walk this back and maybe he retires. But my interpretation of that is he's just trying to preserve some leverage to get this to actually happen in a respectable time period. Because as frustrating as Rodgers is as a human being, and as much of like a dick as he's acting like, honestly, at times, including his fixation on the media and hiding that stuff from him and acting like the media are a bunch of leeches when, the reason that people are talking about you, dude, is because you're one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. You welcome this speculation. You go on your own media platforms and then the other media platforms speculate. And this is a part of the game when you're playing in the in professional sports and you're, I think, like milking a lot of this attention. So I don't love that. But putting that aside, the Packers are not treating him right. And this brings us back to why he even was so disgruntled in the first place, is that they're just, I love the way their organization is structured without having a billionaire owner, but it allows kind of bureaucrats within that organization like Mark Murphy and Brian Gutekunst to just do what the Packers do, regardless of what the desires are of a guy like Rodgers, who's the greatest quarterback in the history of their franchise, more than Favre, more than Bart Starr. I'm telling you that. I mean, I think he's the most talented quarterback I've ever seen besides Patrick Mahomes. Just do right by him. He wants to leave, and you guys don't want him. That's the other part. If they still wanted him around, they want to move on to Jordan Love. They've made that clear. Rodgers said so himself. So just let him go. Let him go.
It's interesting because I do think you're absolutely right there, which is that it does really seem like, especially over the last few drafts, when there's clearly been like, there have been multiple instances where we've obviously seen the clear need for pass catching upgrades that Rodgers has needed over multiple drafts, not just one, like multiple, and the desire, or at least the intention, and then ultimately the decision to go in a way that seemingly, like you said, kind of fits this like nebulous Packers ethos over actually upgrading the offense, retooling the offense. So, like you said, this generational talent can maximize his skills and the skills that he also helps elevate around him to win more playoff games. And I say this in terms of multiple drafts because they had a first-round pick a few years ago, which they used to take Jordan Love. They used to take the insurance policy after Rodgers was going to leave. They had a second-round pick. They took A.J. Dillon, I think was a good player, but that's a second-round draft pick on a running back where there were absolutely pass-catching options available still at that time in the second round of that year's draft. And the same goes for even last year when with the first two first-round picks they had, they used them on Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt.
Yeah, hey, I mean, like, I love those Georgia guys, right? But at the I'm not sure.
Both Georgia. Yeah,
both Georgia. Just making sure. But like. Exactly, but that's their process. They're never going to take a receiver in the first round.
Exactly,
they're never going to do it.
In the sense that, and of course, yes, last year they did ultimately spend second, third round picks on Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, but that's still further in the draft. When they were picking Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt, they could have gotten somebody like a Jahan Dotson or something like that. Anyone that was in that mid to late first round tier in last year's draft. It was certainly possible. They just chose not to do it.
You're right, and it's even before that, honestly, all of those years where Rodgers was making it to NFC championships or getting really far and falling to more talented teams in the later rounds of the playoffs. All of that was put on Rodgers, like what a choker, what he just doesn't have what it takes, which was insane, right? And that he felt, I think, emboldened by some of the coverage where people were saying this guy does not have enough support around him, and that was the case. You see how teams are winning the Super Bowl in the modern era. They are providing and going all in on their elite quarterback and being aggressive and trying to get them the support, not just in the receiving room, but on like game changers on every side of the ball. And it's been a long time since the Packers have had game changing players. They have a lot of good, they have a lot of solid. They always have had that. But they don't really go all in to get superstars. I mean, even the Patriots would do that kind of stuff where they went all in on Randy Moss. I mean, the Giants ended up beating them in that season, but that was the undefeated in the regular season, 18-1 year. But they did other. I mean, Stephon Gilmore, right? He wasn't a pick of theirs. They got him from the Buffalo Bills. Right. Stephon Gilmore. So. Right. The Patriots, they were another animal in terms of like how they structured their team and the system that they had, and Brady being there. But still, you guys get what I'm saying. That's just an indisputable fact that they did not support Rodgers enough in Green Bay. Last year, though, he didn't play that well. And I think part of it was because he's kind of lost it a little. He's gone into this like wellness, darkness retreat mindset where he wasn't around in the offseason to train with these new rookie receivers. He just came for training camp. I don't believe he came for OTAs. And then there's this consistent public attention being drawn to him and his feud with the front office internally in his own program. And it's just become a complete circus act. And the Packers really don't have anyone to blame other than themselves. Rodgers became disgruntled, rightfully so. That mixed with the fact that Green Bay seems to always just privilege the quarterback over every other position and allows them to be the kingmaker in town. Same stuff, ego trips all everywhere. Like that paired with the very real reasons that Rodgers was pissed off, it's created a toxic situation. Rodgers kind of lost it. But to bring it back to him going to the Jets, that's why, for all of that past mismanagement, for all of the toxicity that this situation has engendered, let the guy go. You don't want him around anymore. Don't try to milk everything that you can from this situation because it's a mutual parting of ways. And I just really am bummed out that the Packers are going to, like, I don't know, they're in a sense holding themselves hostage because they still have that cap on their books and they can't necessarily make the moves that they want when Rodgers is still on that team. They're just going to wait, and I wouldn't be shocked if they wait until the draft. Well, and that sets the Jets back and your guy Rodgers, who got you guys a Super Bowl ring in that magical year when they were in the wild card, right? And they just kept, and he just kept winning. He was incredible.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is that what I'm curious about is the potential that the reason this is taking so long is for that exact situation that you're describing, which is one, maybe they're trying to extract it or delay it to see whatever more that they can extract from the Jets potentially. Whether I don't even necessarily know exactly what that might be in terms of either players, picks, cash considerations, whatever it is. I'm not entirely sure what their maximum asking price is necessarily to trade for Rodgers. But also, I'm wondering if there is something about certain dates in his contract kicking in for there to maybe be less of a dead cap hit or something like that, or if there's a signing bonus that would transfer over where maybe there's some sort of larger flexibility with offsetting some of those costs, some of that guaranteed money that might be on his deal still. I'm wondering if maybe for purely financial considerations in terms of getting some of his money off their books that they're waiting a little bit longer. I just don't know for sure. I don't know if there's even or if that's even a possibility. I'm not even sure if that's the.
Rodgers is going to basically rip up his contract and then start something new with the Jets because they're not going to be able to take on this nearly $60 million cap hit.
No,
which is what Rodgers very smartly did, essentially, to say, well, I'm going to control my own destiny and make this contract an albatross for the Packers, so that he could determine where he wants to go, and
Right.
he had the leverage in that situation. I believe that like there's
Sorry to interrupt you, Emma. Someone, Joseph Wyatt here in YouTube chat says June 1st, Packers saved 16 million against the cap.
Okay.
Which is a decent amount. It's not a huge amount. It's something.
But I mean, that's a fair point. I just think Rodgers is going to expedite this, say, well, I'm going to rip up this old contract and we're going to start anew with the Jets, so that there won't be any cash obligations, because the guy's got more money than God. I don't really think it's
he's not going to miss it.
He's not going to miss it.
And the Jets surely will pay him relatively handsomely in the ensuing contract berth.
And I just am I think he's going to try to play ball in that way, and I wish that the Packers were. I don't know. Why are they willing to just linger in this constant media spotlight for a few more extra assets? Like, let's go on. Let's go.
And honestly, potentially, I would also say for their purposes, just to be able to kind of lay out their plan for the short-term future.
For the off season.
Yeah, in the sense of to not have this continue to hang over their heads, that Rodgers can be on another team. They can now kind of think about what the next few moves for their offseason, but also just for their team in general, with seemingly Jordan Love at the helm, what that looks like.
Are you starting to get excited though, as a Jets fan? Like, I mean,
excited, I don't know if it is the word, because
I'm starting to get a little excited when you think about that. It's going to be pretty exciting, and the AFC East is going to be exciting.
It's not necessarily in the short term that I'm not excited or not intrigued by on paper the configuration of like Aaron Rodgers throwing to
Garrett Wilson,
Elijah Moore, a healthy Breece Hall in the backfield, could also be catching screen passes. And then also, still having CJ Uzomah, Tyler Conklin, like, hopefully the offensive line, is ideally, if Mekhi Becton can actually stay healthy for a season and actually shore up their left tackle spot, as he was supposed to do when they drafted him in 2020. Hopefully Elijah Vera Tucker can stay healthy. They're one of, if not their best option, on the offensive line.
And now Allen Lazard, too.
Allen Lazard now kind of most likely taking Corey Davis's role, because I imagine with now paying Lazard, Davis will they'll let Davis walk. I think it's definitely on paper it's an exciting group, and to say nothing of how already I'm very much I'm very much confident in the defense, being able to if not match the exact performance, still be kind of in that top 10 consideration. So all of that makes sense to me. All of that is exciting to me. I'm just curious about how it actually manifests itself in practice, what the scheme will look like with an Aaron Rodgers, Nathaniel Hackett steered offense with this group of players. What Rodgers will be like as a leader and as a member of the Jets, and as a person who will have a lot of scrutiny on him, as he always already does, but just in terms of how he'll handle that. And also just as a Jets fan who was more excited about or potentially focused on like the long-term health / the long-term like growth of the organization, that's my only it's a large quibble, I would say, but nonetheless, I am curious about what the numbers will look like to pay a quarterback who is turning 40 this year, how he'll play, whether the age bug will finally really catch up to him over the course of whatever deal that he signs with the Jets. So I have those concerns, and I really want to see what it looks like in practice before I get too ahead of myself. But on paper, of course, especially with what we saw last season, this, even if it's just Aaron Rodgers with all of the Aaron Rodgers-ness that comes with Aaron Rodgers, it's a more distinct, defined answer at quarterback, which was not only completely absent last year, but also like the fundamental flaw and the single biggest roadblock to their success.
I would say a good word for how you're feeling is probably apprehensive.
Yes, exactly. Like I in the sense that you're right. I'm reticent. Like I'm hesitant to fully like embrace like this model just yet because I just don't exactly know what it'll be.
Because to me, it does feel, one, it's so Jets for them to be held hostage by this situation, right? And to have kind of painted themselves into a corner, trying to
Absolutely.
get this big fish and going all in when they don't need to necessarily be doing that. They could show more restraint. It feels like the Jets.
If they sign Mercedes Lewis, I'm going to lose my mind.
But, yeah, I know. And Randall Cobb.
Yeah,
I mean,
like
this is
two fossils. Like,
yeah, just because Aaron Rodgers is buddies with
he
them.
just wants his friends there. He's
I
like LeBron James. Like he's literally like LeBron. Like
I know, but it's like at least LeBron James's friends, some of them can still hoop.
Some of them
like,
are sort of like Anthony Davis. At least is
Randall
talented.
Cobb is ancient. I mean, he seems like a great guy.
Mercedes Lewis is this will be his 18th year in the league, and he's 39 years old. He's a tight end. Like he's not like he doesn't.
Are you serious? He's 39 years old.
Or he's 38 or 39. He just inline blocks. Like he doesn't catch passes. Like
there's no chance. Like they can't do that. I mean, but I don't know.
like spending money on Mercedes Lewis at this point in his career. And don't get me wrong, I love a big boy tight end. I love them, but just like not for this particular situation.
No, and definitely not a 39-year-old one. I mean, it's just like I'm concerned about the media attention, and
Totally,
I'm concerned about this just being like an extension of the Jets' complete like poor process when it comes to the quarterback position, which is the through line here. And people, laughed. Like Zach Wilson is someone that people really like to mock for some reason. I don't know what it is. Is it because he looks like he's 12? Is he just is he a little annoying? Sure.
I think it's the combination of like looking like a character from the Little Rascals and the whole like banging your mom's friend thing.
And I also think he looks like a preppy kid that you might hate in high school.
Yeah.
So sure,
it might just be purely aesthetic, like for the most part.
Yeah, but for me, why I was always so hesitant to throw him to the wolves was because this seems so much more like a system issue with the Jets than it did with Zach Wilson. Like he might have not been able to be in a worse situation, and he could have been with a coach that played to his strengths. Then he starts to get confidence. Who knows what could have happened with Zach Wilson? He had, in my opinion, he had a lot of talent in the way he throws the football, but his processing not so much. But again, that's coaching in many ways. But then the sprint to fix it immediately with Rodgers, that's what concerns me.
Yeah, that's
what
it's the timetable more than anything. It's not.
It's the Jets organization. The fact that they do it like this.
Absolutely, but that's why
I don't like the process, even though I do like on paper all the things you say about the fit.
But that's primarily,
and it is exciting.
That's primarily my issue because honestly, would I rather be in a situation where, for example, and obviously none of these circumstances that I could even mention will ever be 1-to-1, but would I potentially rather be in a situation where, all caveats aside, ownership aside, the comparison I'm about to make, the trade aside, would I rather it kind of be like the Panthers in terms of not necessarily everything about the Panthers in terms of like roster construction or whatever, but I more mean where I'm in the driver's seat to handpick get the first overall quarterback, to have that guy on a rookie deal with
CJ Stroud, say
with the players that I had just mentioned around Rodgers, but instead of the turning 40 quarterback who will be extremely expensive, that's a 20-year-old, 21-year-old guy on a really team-friendly deal who could potentially, if he hits, and it's a near impossibility for a drafted Jets quarterback to be a hit. But if in this hypothetical that I'm constructing here, I would rather that scenario. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I know there's many machinations that would even make that remotely possible from the perspective of the Jets. But I'm just saying, like, that type of roster construction, that type of team building, it's what I wanted with when they took Wilson with the second overall pick. But I also think it's not purely just that he's bad. He played very poorly, but I also don't necessarily think he was put in an amazing position to succeed.
No.
And I think people underestimate, or at least in my opinion, people underestimate. It is not easy. Like, so much of the way or the ability for players in the draft to hit or to succeed or to prosper is the circumstances that they are drafted into.
More than any other sport, in my opinion. More than any other sport, because you can still put up good stats sometimes on the bad team on the basketball team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or like, and sometimes bad basketball teams also allow those guys to thrive a little bit because they have more playing time. Like, they're not behind any vets. It's different in football, especially the quarterback position. So it's just, yeah, I'm
not certain, for example, if like the Raiders drafted Josh Allen, for example,
right,
that Josh Allen would be what we know Josh Allen to be.
Yes.
Or same goes for Justin Herbert, or somebody like that, or Trevor.
Well, Herbert's in a horrible position. He could be considered. It would be him. It could be him and Mahomes if he were in a different situation.
That's actually might be a more interesting corollary in the sense that he was drafted in a situation where almost he's being used incorrectly.
Yes,
he still is showing what we thought he'd show. He's just not being used the right way given his skills. But we even saw this specifically with Trevor Lawrence as an example. I'm not even comparing Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson. I think Trevor Lawrence is significantly better, but Trevor Lawrence was in his rookie year with first year coach Urban Meyer, had the rookie season from hell, did not look nearly like he did at Clemson. Then second year Doug Peterson comes in. He looks like a really high end quarterback, really high ceiling quarterback in his second year. They win the division, they win a playoff game.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. And so situation, franchise is so much of it. And I mean, that's why I feel like there are a lot of what ifs with Zach Wilson. But hey, look, I'm just hoping this gets done soon so we can all shut the hell up and we can figure out what the compensation is and these teams can move forward and wipe their hands of this drama, this constant drama.
My real hope is that if Trey Lance is still not available to play in San Francisco, and Sam Darnold is QB1, and either Lance has still injured or has fallen out of favor with the 49ers, that Kyle Shanahan signs Zach Wilson as Darnold's backup. And Wilson wins like most improved player because he's with Kyle Shanahan, and Shanahan just makes him.
The rumor was that Shanahan loved Wilson coming out in the draft.
Like that, I wanted Darnold Wilson QB room in San Francisco.
Oh my God,
the island of misfit Jets with the
Niners
49ers.
are so talented that they could legitimately win the Super Bowl with Sam Darnold.
I agree. Like I'm looking forward to like Darnold like having the best season of his career. After he was left for dead by Adam Gase and the Jets.
We don't need to play this thing with Rodgers. Just briefly, like I don't like Schefter, but he was like, I texted him, lose my number. It's just like everyone's just trying to do their job, Aaron. You're trying to do your job. Media's trying to do their job. Try to get scoops from you. This isn't some nefarious plot. And I went through oddly his like Twitter likes because I saw Rupar had done that. And it's just everything. He's liking this conspiracy theory nonsense about vaccines and lab leak. Like, he's completely red pilled. He's Rogan pilled. But I thought, the football trends right wing, and you think like, I thought for a while, wow, like this guy, he speaks out about racism. He seems to really hate kind of NFL culture, and that's why Rodgers was my dude. And then you realize, oh wait, actually it's just he's anti-authority in the new kind of anti-science right-wing way. So it just makes it, as opposed to just being like Brett Favre.
I've made this point before about Rodgers, but also about some of our other big brain thinker types like Kanye and Kyrie Irving, etc., where it's like or even Chappelle to a degree, where the correlation becomes like seeing something that is either considered or is unacceptable or like taboo or kind of like edgy, so to speak, and being like, me saying it is not only like brave and courageous, it's also true.
Yes.
Like, it's also right.
Right.
And like the fact that it is assigned that connotation means that the people means that they, whoever they might be, don't want you to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want you to say that. They don't want you to think about that. They don't want you to have that conversation without actually considering whatsoever, seemingly, why that might be the case, without actually doing even contributing or devoting a second of their time to understanding or trying to understand why exactly that might be the case.
Right. Well, breaking news I just saw, actually.
Oh, no way.
Roger Goodell extended, finalizing a multi-year contract extension as commissioner.
Oh, the owners were like, you have been a very, very good boy.
Very good boy. I mean,
we want to thank you for being our little guy.
That's what people maybe misunderstand sometimes about what the role of a commissioner is. They are the spokesperson for the owners. They are the steward of the ownership class. And that's why they like Roger Goodell. Roger Goodell takes heat publicly for like the whole Kaepernick thing, right? What was Goodell gonna do in that situation, right?
Partner with Jay-Z.
Well, obviously, but
the Shield.
Goodell, someone we should definitely criticize, but he's like the 33rd most important person.
Oh yeah, it's
because the 32 owners are the ones colluding against Colin Kaepernick, and then the 33rd most powerful guy, Roger Goodell, comes out and takes the arrows.
It almost makes him slightly more odious because he's de facto like Smithers in The Simpsons.
Yeah.
To like 32 Mr. Burns's. Like,
right.
He's like the lapdog mouthpiece toady for rich people who have more power than him and who basically his relevance and existence as NFL commissioner hangs in the balance of what these 32 rich guys think of him.
And it's not even the 32 also. I should even be more precise. He mostly speaks on behalf of the real power players in the league.
Of course. It's almost
John Mara,
it's a body.
Robert Kraft, all right?
Jerry Jones.
Totally. These are the guys that are the real movers and shakers in the NFL. And they're the ones making a lot of these choices. And so, in theory, the commissioner should be working in partnership with the owners and, say, the union, but Goodell's tenure has not been as such. And for the most part, most commissioners don't behave in that manner. I would say that Adam Silver's been a little bit better, but it's not a position that's amenable to, like, say, kind of more progressive values, because he is the representative, the sole person that tries to cobble together the interests of the billionaires, which often are crushing the demands of labor in this instance, which are the NFL players, on behalf of this group of owners. And Goodell, look, I mean, he, by the way, son of a former Republican senator, just throwing that out there, Roger Goodell.
Really?
Senator Charles Goodell from New York.
I don't even think I knew that. That's so funny.
Yeah. So, but
that's not even, speaking of toadies, I guess that's not too surprising.
Yeah, I mean, he was a U.S. senator appointed by Nelson Rockefeller.
Oh, the family business.
Yeah, so he was one
toady for powerful people.
Rockefeller Republican. He's, of course, he was going to get extended. This is record profit time for the NFL. And I'm not sure when the next CBA is. See, again, this is breaking news. The next CBA, wow, it's not until 2030 they're going to have to begin negotiating it, because it was last approved in 2020. But the cap is about to explode, and the NFL players need to, when the next collective bargaining agreement comes, really plant their feet, because as more gambling money comes in, the NFL is partnering with Caesars or DraftKings or whatever the sports book is that they have a partnership with. The cap is about to explode. So when Daniel Jones is making $40 million a year, that's going to look like silly little peanuts next year in the following years. Goodell has made them very rich. It's our responsibility, covering this even in the casual way that we do, to make sure that the players get rich in that time period as well. And I should say it's not even 32 owners; it's 31 because the Green Bay Packers ownerless.
Right. Oh, right. 31.
And Goodell is a part of the NFL that has enshrined it into its bylaws that will never, ever, ever happen again. And if Snyder sells the team, which it's looking more and more likely, he's looking to sell it for like $6-7 billion apparently, driving that price up. Who knows how much it'll go for? But if Bezos makes a play, then the entire league is going to start to get even more money pouring in because the valuations of these franchises are going to go up. And oh boy, it's about they're rolling in it.
Which is exactly why
Goodell's getting extended. Yeah.
And which is exactly why what you say is so well taken, is that with this windfall not only happening but most likely projected to continue, therefore Goodell's extension, because they're happy with the profits and the outlook for the NFL. The players in the NFLPA absolutely need to fight tooth and nail for the largest piece of that pie that they can get.
Yeah.
Because it's only getting larger, and if the owners have their way, the sliver that the players get will only get smaller.
Yep. All right, let's just do some NFL free agency quick takes. Brandon Cooks to the Cowboys for a 5th round pick and a 6th round pick, and the Texans are retaining money. Like, I know Brandon Cooks is a good player, like very good all around receiver, production wise. You'd be shocked to see how much he's produced, especially because it was a little scary. He was having a lot of concussions back to back, and you just didn't know what his NFL future holds, and probably I don't know if he should even be playing. But I don't really understand what the Texans are doing. He might have been disgruntled and said, I need to get out of here. But who is there? Say they draft Bryce Young. Who is Bryce Young throwing to for the Texans? Like they didn't make
Robert Woods.
They didn't make any moves in free agency either, except for that. But Robert Woods was bad last year with
Brown
the Titans. Yeah,
from the Chiefs.
I mean,
at tight end.
Like we were.
They're really just, I think, stripping it down to the studs. Basically.
I know, but it's been how many years are we into Casario's tenure there? It's been a long period of time without him making any big moves on that roster.
But I agree with you in the sense that if they kept Brandon Cooks, I wouldn't necessarily think it was a bad thing, even though they're clearly trying to rebuild and get younger, and he probably is one of the larger financial, one of the larger financial responsibilities on their books. However, but like you said,
they're retaining salary.
They're one, retaining salary, so it's not even necessarily shedding money to get rid of him. And two, like you said, whoever they're going to take at quarterback for the second overall pick.
Yeah.
You would definitely be putting them in a pretty decent position from the outset, even if you're not expecting to win a whole lot of games, when you have your blue chip left tackle that you just signed to a big extension, which was very well deserved and needed for them to do so. Laramie Tunsil is probably the best player on their offense, period, at this point. So good thing for them to shore that up. But then for him to have who I would call a really, when healthy and on the field, one of the more like reliable pass catching options in the league, I think it would have kind of behooved them to keep a guy like Brandon Cooks to at the very least have that foundation and establish some sort of tone setting for the offense by someone who is a little older and has played a lot of football.
I think the point is just that he was going to walk in free agency. He's made it clear. But I don't know if getting a 5th and the 6th round pick is worth it. But look, I mean, maybe he just said, I'm sitting out. I hate this team. I don't want to deal with it.
I think there's a chance that was the
case.
Only because I feel like there were a few moments this year where he did kind of cryptically tweet, just like, maybe not even so cryptically. It was basically just like, I hate it here.
Yeah, I was laughing.
I actively dislike being on the Texans.
People like joke about, how the different position groups tweet, and like the quarterback's so excited and the wide receivers tweet something like the enemy hides in the darkness with a knife and then like logs off, and that's it. It's always just so melodramatic.
Right, cryptic, mysterious, open-ended.
Right. So that was interesting to me, but that's a very good number too. They needed some pressure taken off of CeeDee Lamb. He was carrying too much of their passing game last year with the Dallas Cowboys. Another really fascinating wrinkle, CJ Gardner-Johnson seems to have overestimated what contract he was going to get, so he just took a 1-year deal with the Lions, leaving the Eagles one year $8 million contract, only $6-ish million in guarantees. That's just going to be a prove it year, and then he says he's going to test it out in free agency next year. But good for the Lions, who needed some reinforcements in that secondary. Okudah, I remember they were trying to trade out of that number 3 overall pick, I believe, when they drafted Jeff Okudah, and that was a good impulse. They were unable to do it, but he was clearly not worth the 3rd overall pick. And a lot of smart draft experts were kind of saying that he didn't have high-end athleticism, and that's been an issue for the Lions in their secondary. So it's good they got somebody.
Yeah, and they also signed Cam Sutton from the Steelers as another cornerback to shore up parts of their secondary, because, like you said, they have not had a lot of answers at secondary consistently the last few years. They've kind of I would say sort of piece stuff together around Okudah, and especially Okudah. It's not even like as if Okudah has been fully healthy since he was drafted.
Yeah, he's been struggling,
since he's been drafted. Excuse me. So I think it's a great move, and also, I mean, I feel for the guy because he played really well last season, and was an integral piece to the kind of the stretch run for the Eagles leading up to the Super Bowl, and he
had a bunch of interceptions.
Yeah,
too.
He honestly played really well for them for being a midseason acquisition. And I just am surprised by how little he was either sought after, or at least the market was so thin for him. But at the end of at the same time, that's, I think, a phenomenal addition for the Lions from a culture perspective, but also from a gameplay perspective, and at a really, really pretty bargain rate cost for a guy of his caliber. And also, it kind of makes me wonder how the Eagles weren't able to, come to terms and get him back if he was really only fetching those types of numbers. I mean, fortunately,
I don't think he was. I think this came so late in free agency because he was holding out for something bigger than everyone.
That's possible too.
People just moved on, and the Eagles extended Bradbury, and they brought back Slay.
And granted, they sort of did that with Slay in the sense that Slay was able to test the market a little bit. He maybe wasn't getting the offers he thought he was going to get. Bless you.
Ooh.
Thank you.
Bless you. Thank you.
He's potentially not getting the offers that he thought he might potentially get. So the Eagles bring him back. And so I definitely don't think, as much as I'm kind of surprised by the value here, I think it's great for the Lions. And also, I don't think it's too terrible for the Eagles, only because they were successfully able to bring back two, I would say, first, second team All-Pro candidates in Bradbury and Slay as their 1 and 2, so it's not a huge loss.
Yeah,
it would be. I think I would feel worse about it if it was like, oh my gosh, they lost Bradbury at free agency and Slay, and then TJ Edwards goes to the Bears, and CGJ goes to the Lions, but they've only lost 2 of those guys.
Well, no, they lost Javon Hargrave.
Oh, and Javon Hargrave to the 49ers. So they're that's it basically. But so those are definitely some significant losses. But to have Bradbury and Slay back, I think is huge.
I would, if you were gonna, like, CJ's Gardner Johnson is elite in the slot, or as a nickel corner, I should say. But if you're going to lose one guy out of those 3, maybe in terms of importance, that's what you think. Even though I
think Slay and Bradbury are both better, and also I think they're more versatile. Like they can do more stuff.
But as of now, but Gardner Johnson is young, and so to lock him up for a long time would be beneficial to any team, I think. But the Eagles just didn't have the flexibility to do it. Big news on my end, for me at least, Darren Waller to the Giants. Like, we've talked about this off air, just not on the show. I'm thrilled with that acquisition. I mean, with that trade.
It's I think the trade
For
value
pick
was good.
100.
Yeah, I think the trade value was good. It was also I also thought it was smart that they offloaded the pick from the Kadarius Toney trade, so it wasn't even like a homegrown draft pick. It was an asset from another trade.
Yeah.
That isn't even that cost prohibitive, I'd say, in terms of the value at that pick. And I think Waller will be a great addition and a great insurance policy and kind of a pressure release for this offense. I think he's going to be a great.
Well, he's a
one of the
mismatch
best,
nightmare, and
well, absolutely. When
he's
healthy,
30 years old, but he's a younger 30 because you remember he wasn't
started his career later.
Well, he had to take a break for
right.
his addiction issues,
Right.
and he's such an amazing guy, an inspirational story, which
Totally.
I love having that on my team.
Locker room presence, I think is
and his contract
crucial.
is way too little. I mean, for the value that he's provided, I remember when he signed it, there were grumblings like, what the hell was this? What was his agent doing?
Yeah.
And so there aren't really any guarantees on the rest of his deal. That's what makes the trade so odd to me. I don't know what the hell is going on in Las Vegas.
No, me neither. I think it's a really especially the combo of like, first it's the Jimmy G signing, but then basically you sign Jacoby Myers as because like did they lose another receiver to who Jacoby Myers is replacing?
No.
Oh,
but it
seemed like a weird fit to me.
Foster Moreau is a free agent, and so that's their other tight end. People were like, okay, well, Foster Moreau can just fill in. And I know Waller's had some injury stuff, but for the contract and the upside he provides, it seems ridiculous.
And Waller's is also, not to put too fine a point on it, significantly better than Foster Moreau.
Yeah, okay. Would you take Jimmy G over Derek Carr? Who would you take?
Carr.
Same.
Carr's smarter. Carr's a better all-around quarterback.
Waller over nobody on the roster. I would take Waller. I mean, Foster Moreau's doing.
Over Foster Moreau. Yeah, 100%.
But he's a free agent. He's doing.
Right.
He was just in New Orleans and Cincinnati doing free agency visits.
So it's not even a guarantee he's coming back.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then pair it with the Devontae Adams trade. We're tearing it down, but before
then getting
that, extending this receiver who's on the older side, who's very productive still,
and
but
also,
that's an all-in move that you do.
And also sort of ostensibly for the college connection between Derek Carr and Devontae Adams.
Right.
And then getting rid of Derek Carr.
Yes.
For Jimmy G.
For Jimmy G,
who has no connection with Devontae Adams whatsoever.
No.
And played for Josh McDaniels.
And getting rid of, if they're tearing it down, why are you getting Jimmy G? Just keep Jarrett Stidham on the roster, who played well at the end of the year. See what you have in him.
Right, and then he's now gone.
He's gone.
He's in Denver.
He was pissed.
Yeah.
He was like, I played well at the end of the year, and you brought in a guy that I don't even know how much better at this point in their careers. Like, I like Jarrett Stidham's skill set, and he's younger, and
he honestly played pretty well against the 49ers,
well.
which I was like not expecting.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, Jimmy G, I don't really believe in his skill set that much. I understand, look, he makes tough throws into tight windows. Sometimes the windows are non-existent, but he's a turnover machine, and it's just I don't like that style of play that much. I would have rather just like seen what I had in the guy I'd been working with, traded for from New England. You believed in him that much. He played well at the end. Clearly, he got pissed and he left for Denver. I just don't understand what they're doing. Like, are you guys building it? Tearing it down, or you keep trying to remain relevant?
But
sorry, really quickly,
okay, yeah.
Devontae Adams tweeting cryptic shit. Josh Jacobs tweeting cryptic
exactly.
shit.
Tagging Josh Jacobs also
and hearing from the NFLPA survey that players really don't like working with Josh McDaniels. Right. I don't know what he's done to garner any confidence from Raiders fans. I'd be very concerned. And
the Jacoby Myers deal is weird to me because I think he's great, but I am almost like, I feel like it kind of seems like they're giving a decent amount of money to Jacoby Myers to sort of just basically create like Patriots West after the Devontae trade. So it's almost just like, I don't like you said, the team building aspect of the last like 2 or 3 years seems like kind of like completely incoherent and kind of like illogical, because I'm thinking to myself, if you're signing Jacoby Myers to this money, in the amount of years and money that they gave him, I think it was like 3 years, 33 million or something like that, like 11 million a year potentially,
something like that. Yeah. They gave it. It was identical to the Juju Smith-Schuster deal, which he signed in New England. Interestingly,
right? And I guess that's the weird thing for me for both ends. It's like, in terms of would I rather have Jacoby Myers in New England than Juju in New England? Like probably,
yes.
I think that's also
I
what
would
I was
take
thinking.
Jacoby Myers over Juju.
And it's the same amount of money basically for the Patriots to swap out Jacoby Myers for Juju, which I think is kind of a weird construction for them, because I honestly just like you said, I think
what's going on with the Patriots is a whole nother story.
It's
I don't even agree with their moves either.
Right, and then with the Raiders too, like I'm wondering, like with Jacoby Myers, I'm like, you have Hunter Renfrow. Like, how are you going to split? How are those targets going to get split up? You already have a kind of guy who I feel like sort of does similar things to Jacoby Myers and is pretty good at those things that he does. I mean, he's mostly a slot guy.
They have so much money tied up in the receiver position for a team that's picking 7th overall because they were bad.
Exactly. Right. It to me seems like so many hats on hats without a clear understanding or rationale for these moves, or like how they're actually going to pan out short term and long term.
Yeah.
The whole roster, like at this point, especially now that it's like Jimmy G, Jacoby Myers, Devontae Adams, no Darren Waller. It's just bizarre. Josh Jacobs. It's just like a very I have really little understanding of what they're going to look like or if any of it will work.
I don't think it will. I think Josh McDaniels, if he's already lost the locker room this year, 1 year in, I don't know. I mean, I don't like their team building process, but I do really love the fact that they sent Darren Waller to the Giants.
Absolutely.
Who it's going to be pretty exciting.
I think it's a great upgrade. Not even to say or to even think that Daniel Bellinger won't have a role. I actually think it'll just create more opportunities and diversity in the playbook.
Yeah.
For them, they could use both Bellinger and Waller in sets together, which I actually think would work.
A lot of teams are starting to really try to return to some of the 2 tight end sets as a part of a play action or like RPO game. I mean, the Giants were really into that with Daniel Jones rushing or passing last year, and so they can have 2 tight ends on the field and it be a real question of whether are they going to run this and smash this down your throat, or are they going to pass, and they can have Bellinger and what I want to say is that Atlanta seems to be trying to do that too when they got Jonnu Smith from the Patriots, pair him with Kyle Pitts. Smith is a good run blocker, and then you don't know what they're going to do when those 2 guys are on the field.
I think it's sound process for what I'm pretty confident that Brian Daboll can do with that type of scheming and that type of scheme with a heavier set with 2 tight ends, and for the value and what at his peak Waller can be. I just think it's a great complementary piece to what the Giants have still with Daniel Jones, with Saquon. Hopefully Sterling Shepard back healthy from his injury. Waller, Bellinger, Isaiah Hodgins coming in, playing really, really great down the stretch, even in the playoffs.
And they got Paris Campbell.
Paris Campbell.
I really liked coming out in college. He struggled with injuries, but I still beve in his upside and his speed.
I just think at where the Giants are now, even despite the overachieving in the postseason, taking these flyers or so-called flyers or risks on players with some injury risk, and just seeing what they have and what Daboll can kind of help them utilize with their skill sets and with what they're best at. I think all of them are worthy gambles to take, and I think Waller will add something that they didn't have last year.
And Giants fans being like, why they didn't get a wide receiver one yet? That Rome is not built in one day. They should not have splurged on a wide receiver one, because then we get a Kenny Golladay situation.
Exactly.
Where you're bidding against yourself. It's just bad. The Giants are not one wide receiver away from having a Super Bowl winning team. You do this in multiple years.
And especially this wide free agency class for wide receivers. Very thin. Not a lot.
Jacoby Myers was the number 1 receiver on the market.
And I would not necessarily think it's absolutely mandatory in any way for the Giants to go after giving a guy like Jacoby Myers a big time contract, when I'm certain they can find a guy in the draft in the second round or third round or whatever who could give them production that is not worth $11 million a year.
Another interesting signing, Adam Thielen going to the Panthers. So that's at least someone reliable who I think CJ Stroud is going to be the guy. CJ Stroud likely can throw to. I don't really have much to comment on that deal.
This is kind of the thing.
He's pretty washed, but it's like good for, he's a veteran.
But this is almost the thing. I feel like it's not the same because I think Cooks I think still has more gas in the tank than Thielen is a better player. But I kind of think this is the idea that we were sort of talking about, which is like having a veteran, reliable presence who you just know is a consistent pass catcher.
Yeah.
Just like fundamentally, like nothing, no frills, nothing super exciting, just like a reliable veteran presence. And I think the Panthers have, I mean, besides of course, knowing that DJ Moore is no longer with the team, I do think they've really done a good job with a lot of their signings. I think Thielen is a decent signing for exactly what I said, just having a veteran guy in the building for a young quarterback. I really, really like the Hayden Hurst signing for them.
Hayden Hurst is good.
He had one of his better one of if not his best season.
I know.
With the Bengals.
He was my fantasy tight end when Waller was injured, actually. So I was following him closely. I mean, he's a house. Like he's
totally huge guy, good hands, athletic.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think he's another reliable, but also I would say higher upside acquisition clearly than Thielen because he's a lot younger, but I think he's another reliable target who can kind of do a lot of the dirty work over the middle, but also can still kind of get north when he has the chance to do so. I'm high on that. I think that's a really nice signing for them. I think they've done a pretty good job, all things considered, with getting themselves in a position to succeed with the new staff.
I agree.
And seeing what happens. Essentially their entire offensive line has come back, which I think is great. They started playing really well at the end of the year.
Good run blocking offensive line.
Totally. I think Ike Ekwonu was coming into his own. They re-signed Taylor Moton and Bradley Bozeman, which I think both super great for a team knowing you're probably going to get a rookie quarterback to not only have a sturdy offensive line, but continuity there.
Yeah. And speaking of the offensive line, the Bengals getting Orlando Brown on a deal, a complete steal, 4-year, $64 million contract. Not all of that is guaranteed. I don't have the guarantees in front of me. But that is like, when you compare it to what we just saw with Laramie Tunsil, what he's getting, making $25 million a year, that's around like $16 million AAV for Orlando Brown. That is a great deal for the Bengals, and I'm sure Brown feels kind of bummed out because it seems like the market passed him by a little bit. But the Bengals, I like this revenge signing by Orlando Brown because he's going to the one team that's really giving the Chiefs a run for their money in the AFC. I
think it's a great signing. It ultimately, I believe, has led to Jonah Williams, the Bengals left tackle, requesting a trade. But honestly,
they're not going to give him the trade. He'll move to. He hasn't played well enough to demand a trade.
I was going to say he not.
Sorry, Jonah Williams, but the reason they're replacing you is because you have not been a very good left tackle. You can move over to right. and figure it out from there.
I think it's partially that in the sense that not only do I think he's played he's good. I don't think he's not good.
I don't think he's good.
It's more just that I think I don't think he's their permanent or even long-term answer at left tackle, and like you said, I don't think he's played well enough for long enough to have that.
He's been in the league for 5 years, and he's still. There's still a question of should he even play tackle if he should be moved into guard. Like, okay, then the jury's in. Okay, like I mean, he was overdrafted at the time he was drafted by them too. So it's like it was just everyone agreed at the time, and it's kind of playing out like this now. And
he also hasn't been fully healthy.
Yeah,
in his career as well. Whereas Brown, I think, has definitely had less has had less injury, like time served on injury or on the with injury or on the DL or anything like that. Brown, I think, it's interesting that because I see what you're saying. It's interesting. Like you would think that there might have been more of a either A, more suitors for Brown, or B, a desire for the Chiefs to kind of work things out with him or negotiate with him. But I guess like they were more willing to kind of just continue to sort of retool at the position as opposed to staying with the continuity of Brown, signing Jawan Taylor to a bigger deal instead of Brown, letting Andrew Wiley walk to the Commanders. Like I think they were more willing to kind of continue to work at the margins of whatever comes their way to maintain some sort of stability and quality at offensive line. They have Creed Humphrey on a rookie deal, on a team-friendly deal. They have Joe Tooney is still playing well for them.
They have Jawan, the guy they got from
Jawan Taylor was who they kind of signed sort of to in place of Brown.
Right.
So, but to your point, I think this is not only an upgrade over Jonah Williams. I just think this actually, especially when healthy, I think this puts the Bengals line in a really good position.
Much better.
I think,
and they were playing better towards the end of the year too. So
now basically across it'll be Orlando Brown, Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, Williams, I guess if he moves to right tackle
and then Collins, unfortunately,
and La'el Collins,
poor guy, he's not going to be back for most of next year.
So there might still be some work to be done to kind of shore up that other spot. So I mean, I think honestly, it's
a win for the Bengals.
And the Chiefs are fine. The Chiefs are not missing Orlando Brown.
It's just a loss for Brown, who I think wanted more in free agency.
Totally.
But we'll see. Hopefully, he can get back.
Yes, and he can prove it.
The table in a few years.
Totally.
All right, that's kind of my free agency takes. I wanted to give some, NBA takes, NHL takes before we head out. But just gotta say, the Rangers have scored 15 unanswered goals. Did you know that? They won against
six in the first period last night.
6 in the first period. I was watching.
Wild.
It was unbelievable. I mean, and then it was 6-0 against the Penguins and 7-0 against in a back-to-back against the Predators. And before that, they won the game against the Penguins. I went to the Capitals game, and the Rangers won that too, 5-3, and they have not lost since. So I guess I have the magic.
Good luck
touch.
charm.
But wow, I mean, this offense is looking. I'm starting to get a little. Starting to have some expectations. So we'll see about the first round of the playoffs against maybe the Devils. But either way, they're looking. Not only it's the consistency, it's the quality of play, and also the guys who I think were necessary to get going for the offensive firepower to sort of reach its ceiling are playing where they need to be. And Shesterkin's playing back to
and then having the backstop of having a generational goalie play like a generational goalie.
But he's been struggling a little this year. But he's unlike Lundqvist was so consistent all the time. Shesterkin's much more of an athletic freak, but his peaks is sometimes higher than what I even saw. It's just he's not that consistent right now.
And you can forget, especially when you have the pinnacle of consistency like Lundqvist was, that even really great goalies can have swoons, but then turn that around to still put out that really because I agree with you. Ceiling wise, Shesterkin I think is totally in terms of the way he moves his body and his fluidity and his control, he might be more explosive than Lundqvist. Just he might not be as consistent. But I think.
But in terms of teams that are playing out of their minds right now, the Rangers and the Bruins are standing alone to a degree.
Definitely.
I mean, the Golden Knights are playing really well too, and Jack Eichel's finally getting going in the West. But the Devils look great. The Rangers play the Hurricanes in back-to-back games this week, starting Tuesday and Thursday. So that'll be a huge,
big test.
Big test to see who the Rangers are going to play in the first round.
A big tilt.
Yeah. The Devils look great. Yeah. And then for the NBA, do you want to talk about this Andrew Wiggins thing? What do you think?
Yeah, whatever you want.
Let's pull up that tweet thread. So. I mean, well, I'm loving how the Knicks are playing, but that's beside the point. They beat the Nuggets. They beat the vaunted Nuggets. But Andrew Wiggins, making headlines and, well, let me actually phrase it like this. Andrew Wiggins has taken a leave of absence from the Warriors. And I am shocked to see some of the reactions on Twitter. I thought this thread was a really good reaction, really good response to some of the criticism that Andrew Wiggins had been facing. Let's pop this up here. This clown here, Sam S. Fondiari, I don't even know who he is. He's a Warriors writer. Okay. Well, that makes it even worse somehow because he covers these guys personally. Yeah. I have a hard time being overly critical of Poole when he's one of 2 Warriors not to miss a single game. He says, meanwhile, how many of you are allowed to miss 1/5 of the calendar year without disclosing why, fully paid? He did disclose. This is a thread from a reporter named Kylan Mills. Wiggins disclosed to the Warriors, his employer, what's going on, and they gave him leave. If you take a leave of absence from your job at a restaurant, should your employer disclose why to every customer who buys food? Buying a ticket doesn't entitle you to a player's personal life. For those saying the fans prop up the organization by buying tickets so fans are owed full disclosure, any business or company runs on customers buying the product, service, etc. Those customers are not owed private details that may lead an employee of that business taking leave. Also, it's crazy to me. People are mad about whether Wiggins is getting paid. In the real world, if a company let an employee struggling with something personal take a leave and paid them so they weren't also struggling financially, they would be praised for being understanding. One of the reasons players around the NBA say the Warriors are so special is the family-like atmosphere, focus on family and positive culture they've created. Fans all brag about that culture until a player is struggling and they're actually letting him step away. I mean, very well said. That she goes on to make more points in that same kind of vein, but it's just like I've been seeing this too. This level of entitlement that even reporters have. Like, for example, Larry Brooks of the New York Post was really critical when Igor Shesterkin of the Rangers refused or didn't come out as one of the players for a press conference after a bad loss. And it's like, this is a problem. It's like, that's a different... I don't really necessarily care that much about player accountability. But this is that to a further extreme where you need to know Wiggins' personal life. He doesn't owe you anything. A lot of journalists feel sometimes like the players that they cover owe them something in this way. And it's like, they're really your sources. They're really your sources, and you should treat them as such, right? You know, it's not about... They're not mandated to speak to you in some instances. In the instances that they are, then they'll speak to you. But in the case of the Shesterkin thing, he wasn't mandated to speak. It's just like that he's annoyed about that best practice. But for Wiggins here, this is even more personal. This is a different layer. Fans are not entitled to their players' personal lives. They are still workers, despite the fact that they make millions of dollars. And the Warriors are doing right by him by not disclosing this. He, of course, has the right to take leave. You are not owed an explanation just because you sometimes tune into Warriors games, or even maybe if you're a season ticket holder. You go there for the entertainment experience, not for the private lives of players to be on display. So I just thought that was a good thread that I wanted to highlight about this whole situation. Because
also the other question for me that I have basically for that, like in response to something like this, and also it's interesting because, Sam is one of Sam is a member of the cottage industry that is Warriors bloggers or Bay Area bloggers, and so I've followed him for a long time, and he's usually not this reactionary or you're kind of like the take jockery is not usually this strong. But my question to his kind of like, the question to his question almost is like, to what degree of severity would the reason that Wiggins is out for like satisfy his questioning or scrutinizing of why Wiggins is not playing? Like, is it like a death of a family member? Is it like is it a mental health crisis that he might be having, or his sibling or cousin or whoever, whatever the case may be. I'm just making up scenarios, but I'm like, how grotesque, how voyeuristic what should it be for it to satisfy him missing this time? Like, how much do we need to know, and how much exposure does that need? Do we need to that person's internal life for it to be satisfactory to someone having this question about Wiggins not playing?
Right. So, I mean, I hope he's okay. That's my take on that situation. All right. Anything you want to add? We can wrap up.
No, I think that's it.
Yeah. Kind of a lull.
Yeah, a little bit of a lull besides March Madness.
We'll be diving into the draft soon enough. Maybe we'll do like a live mock draft.
Yeah,
and make our own.
Oh, that's not a bad
alternate
idea.
doing picks.
No,
That kind
I'd
of
love
deal. Do it on the PFF thing.
And then but then also fortunately we'll have playoff hockey and basketball too.
Oh,
to
baby.
actually sink our teeth into.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that'll be exciting as well.
All right. See you guys. Really appreciate you all. We'll take calls next week.
Yeah.
And sorry we didn't get your IMs. I just completely forgot. I apologize. Next time. Like the stream, subscribe, rate us 5 stars, all that good stuff. Appreciate you all. We will see you next Monday.
Bye-bye.